So good evening, everybody. So we are here again today for our further episodes. The Maharashtra Pradesh Congress Committee presents Law and Policy Series 2021, episode number 6. So today's topic is data protection law in India. We are having the speakers who are very young, brilliant. They are the attorneys from High Court and solicitors. They are from different parts of country where they have done their education. Very soon I'll be introducing them in detail. They will be here to share their expertise on cyber law. Friends, as you all know, we already had 10 speakers and we are getting excellent response from the people, from our viewers who have joined. So it's wonderful that all of you all have joined. Please, all of you all keep giving comments. Also, please, all of you all keep on asking some questions, whatever queries you all have, so that our speakers will be answering to you all. We have with us Honorable Advocate Asif Kurezi ji, who is the chairman of Maharashtra Pradesh Congress Committee. He has been doing a lot of good work to have more membership in our committee and to encourage us to have a lot of legal aid and legal awareness. So I welcome him, sir, here today to give you all an official welcome and address the gathering here today. Over to our Honorable Chairman, Advocate Asif Kurezi ji.
Thank you, Gauri Madam. Once again, today I'm feeling very proud that my son is giving a lecture on cyber law today. And Suyakta Chaudhary, young dynamic lawyer, she's also giving some lecture on data protection law. I'm really very happy that two young budding lawyers, they are giving a lecture on law and policies talk. I welcome on young dynamic speakers and all the participants from MPCC. Thank you once again. And by this, I inaugurate this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for promptly coming, even though you are out of station, and giving blessings to our speakers. We have always felt so proud of you for encouraging our youngsters, our youths, as well as us, and for inaugurating the 6th episode. So now we go ahead with our most dynamic, young, brilliant, intelligent attorney who has come all the way from Nagpur and has done his studies in London. Advocate Amir Asif Kurezi works currently at Bombay High Court with senior advocate S.P. Dharmadhikari. His qualifications are Bachelor of in Arts, as well as he has done his LLB from ILS Law College, Pune, has done his Masters in Law from Queen's Mary University of London. Also, he has done a Diploma in Internet Law from Geneva University, Diploma in Commercial Law from London School of Economics. His other area of interest are cyber law, data protection laws, arbitration, and commercial litigation. He also loves cricket and he has represented in different levels in college and intercollegiate competitions. He is son of our Honorable Chairman, MCC Legal Department Chairman, Senior Advocate Asif Kurezi ji, and also he is a grandson of Member of Legislative Assembly, Honorable Shaukat Kurezi ji. So it is a great pride of us that he is a grandson as well as a son of unknown personalities, and he is all here to enlighten us with his expertise. I welcome him with great honor and respect. Over to you, Amir Asif Kurezi, to give your expertise on data protection law in India. A warm welcome to you, Amir.
Thank you, Gauri ma'am, for a lovely introduction. I hope all of you are doing well in these tough times and are safe wherever you are. So to begin with the topic today, that is data protection laws in India. For me, I think in India, it's a relatively new area of law, rather a technical one, and in my view, it's often taken too lightly. So I would be talking about data protection laws, but not specifically related to India. That would be dealt by our second speaker, Sayukta. So to begin with, the data protect. So I will be basically introducing the concept of data protection. What is data protection? Why do we need data protection? And where did the concept came from? To read and understand data protection, I think it is also essential to read it in the lines of few fundamental rights that we have in India. That is the right to information, right to privacy, freedom of expression, and right to be forgotten, which I don't think is yet a fundamental right in India, but it is in other foreign jurisdictions. So what is data? Data is a set of fact and information that can be used for analysis. So this is just a basic definition of data. Data can be any kind of information that you use from your phones, your laptops, or even your browsers, and whatever devices you are using always collect some or other kind of data. So what is data protection? Data protection is basically a mechanism that is used for protecting your personal information that may be compromised. The terms data protection and data privacy are often used interchangeably. So basically, data protection is a set of strategies and processes you can use to secure your privacy, availability, and integrity of your data. So I would like to begin with an example, and the most relatable example would be this webinar. So as we all know, due to the pandemic, everyone has been restrained from working from the usual the usual ways, because we now have to shift to online classes, online lectures, online meetings, and even online court proceedings. So this has compelled other companies to like work from these new technological advancement and new devices. So how does it affect us in our daily lives? So software such as Zoom, Microsoft Teams, webinars, WebEx that are used to facilitate these kind of stuff that we are used to nowadays. So the privacy concern arises when software allows us to record these meetings. The feature enable recordings that can be viewed at a later stage. This can be stored at some cloud storage for an eternity, or we don't know how many years. So what data is being collected from these meetings? For example, it can be personal data like your email, your phone numbers, your location, the background, your face, your words, and everything. So it doesn't seem too bad, right? But the kind of data collection the kind of data that is collected violates our right to privacy if it is done without a consent or without informing the participants. So this is the entire reason that all of you must have observed while attending or joining this meeting. So this alert comes which says this meeting is being recorded, that appears on your screen. So this is actually prohibited in some foreign jurisdictions. Now this might seem unnecessary to some of you, as you may think that you've got nothing to hide. It's just a meeting. It's just few people talking, expressing their views. But and you might think that there is nothing confidential in your meetings if it is circulated or stored or even passed around. But in my opinion, it would be these meetings. Yeah, so these meetings may be stored in future, and your views might change or your opinions might change, but you can't remove such data even if there are no specific laws to deal with how this data is being collected and used. So to understand the significance of data protection, first we need to like really go into what exactly data is and why is it important to protect our data. So as you know, almost every single detail about us can be stored as data. This might include your medical records, your religious orientations, your password, your account numbers, your bank balance, your biometric analysis, your age, your phone numbers, addresses, location, and even your browsing history. There's this new term which is termed as that the data is new oil in reference to the lucrative opportunities that arise from the data collection. So how can this be evidence? So this can be evidence when you look at the top 5 most emerging or leading companies in the world. That is Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, that belong to data sector. So data can be classified into public and personal data. Public data, which is accessible to public, such as court proceedings, birth records, death records, and your age or other stuff. On the other hand, private data is personal and cannot be shared by anyone without your permission. It includes your financial details, your family details, your browsing details, your location and travel history and whatnot. So why do we need to protect this data? Why does it need protection? This needs protection because when these kinds of data are collected and analyzed and put into a sequence, third parties can commit fraud like identity theft and phishing scams. I'm sure all of you or some of you must be aware about phishing scams. So phishing is basically a method used by cyber criminals to access your valuable information. These basically are fake phone calls that or messages that you receive pretending to be a bank or a company asking you to verify and update your bank details or just provide you with some information. This information then later is used to access your personal accounts, informations, and other sensitive information that can be used to commit frauds. So I don't know, some of you or maybe your relatives or maybe your long distance relatives, somebody must have fallen prey to these kind of scams and frauds that keep happening these days. But some of you might still think that it's fine, it's just basic information, it's my age, it's my phone number, it's my email, what's the harm in it? But then I'm sure all of you have passwords on your phones. Most of you have passwords for your emails, your Facebook accounts, and other devices that you use, basically your laptops and phones. Everything has a passcode. So why do you have a passcode if you have nothing to hide? Why, if you think protecting your data isn't important, it's just normal stuff, normal information that is not detrimental or can damage you. So why do you have passwords on your phone and other devices? So I will give you one reason, that could be that this is, you only have the right to access your information, that is right to privacy, which has been affirmed recently by a 9-bench constitution bench by the Supreme Court in K. Puttaswamy's case. I'm sure Sugyata will deal into it when she talks about data protection laws in India. And so basically, if there is no data protection, your basic fundamental right to privacy is violated. It doesn't matter if you have anything to hide or if you don't have anything to hide. It's still a fundamental right, and I don't think any one of us likes being watched by somebody else. Because basically, these companies, big companies, when you use your phone, your laptops, and you browse something, they are collecting your data no matter what. So if you think when you're doing all this stuff you're alone, you're not. You're being watched by someone or some other entity or company. So this is why we need specific regulations so that we can control the good, the bad from happening. So there can be two ways to it. There can be a good way in which data might be processed. It might be helped to use or to defend crimes and stop frauds and scams. But when it falls into the wrong hands, it can lead to miserable causes. So to understand the scale at which our data is collected by these companies, I would like to give you the example of two biggest companies, which I think everyone uses, that is Google and Facebook. So we basically use multiple Google apps for our daily needs. But what we don't realize is that the information that Google retains is, I don't know, it's maybe for eternity, maybe it can store even after you're not on this planet. So a few Google apps that we all are using include Google Chrome, where we find ourselves searching something every day or the other. Google Maps, which traces our location. So when you use Google Maps, Google Maps knows where you're going, where you're coming from, what your entire journey has been. Then there is Google Photos. Then there is Gmail, which has your confidential and personal conversations. Then there are Google Docs, there are Google Books, there is Google Earth. So the list goes on forever. So in entirety, if a person uses most of these apps, Google actually knows everything about you, like your behavior, your religious orientation, the things you like, the things you don't like, and all the other information. Because these days we are stuck to our phones. We can't like function without our phones to make calls, to have conversations, to search, to research, or whatever the need be. So I don't mean to scare you, but Facebook actually has around 1,200 pages of data per ID, I suppose. So if you have a Facebook ID, even your wall would not be 1,200 pages. I think it would be around 4 to 5 or 6, 7, 8 pages max. But the data that is being collected is around 1,200 pages, and this is a legit source. I don't mean to scare you. So basically, Facebook, whenever you log in, it has data on every user under various subheadings like your hometown, your location, your chat histories, your passwords, your political views, religious views, which can again be used against you when this data is collected and processed by wrong people. To give an example would be the US election when President Trump got elected. So they collected data through Facebook and Google and then targeted certain ads and views so that people get, influenced by it and vote for it. So this huge amount of data that is then collected is then sold to companies mostly for advertising purposes. So companies want you to know what you're basically doing. So for example, if you make a basic Google search, like causes for hair loss, so you might, I think, receive various ads on Instagram or Facebook later that this medicine available or this cream would help you to, fix your problem. So basically these companies, when they collect your data and it's processed, you get specific and targeted ads. So now this doesn't sound bad at all. This might be, like it's fine. It's helping you in some or other way. But the problem lies when this data is processed by unlawful people or people running organized crimes, even terrorists who can use this for trafficking and hacking and whatnot. So when the bad happens, what we need is specific regulations and laws that we can do to protect ourselves from these bad things happening from. I can point out several instances of hate crime that have been committed by targeting and identifying people by using such techniques. Even there was this real instance in US where children photos and details fell into the wrong hand through open Facebook profiles, and the children were later kidnapped and trafficked. So just imagine a stranger just easily getting information about where your child attends a school, where your parents work, what are the timings, what car do you use, and what address do you live at. A very common misuse of Facebook data that can be seen recently is when people steal your photos and information and make a fake account. This has happened with my dad, in fact. So they make a fake account, they use your photos and pictures, and they pretend, and then they send you friend requests pretending to be someone else, and then they ask you for money. So a lot of people, I think, have fallen prey to that as well. So India basically doesn't have watertight laws relating to data protection, I think the data protection bill is being discussed in the parliament and has not been passed, but it has to be taken seriously in the coming years. So where did the data protection concept came from? So initially data protection concept came from Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which is right to privacy, which then further brought GDPR. So GDPR basically stands for Data Protection Regulation, and it is the core of Europe's digital privacy legislation. These regulation originated from, as I said, Article 8 and right to privacy. So I told you in the beginning that data protection has to be read within the lines of right to information, right to access, and right to privacy. So under the terms of GDPR, not only do organizations have to ensure, so basically now I'm moving to how other countries are regulating this and protecting from frauds and mishaps from happening, and make sure that the data that is being collected with our consent is being used for legit purposes and not to scam or to unnecessarily store data that is not in use. So under the terms of GDPR, not only do organizations have to ensure that personal data is gathered legally and under strict conditions with consent, but those who collect and manage it are obliged to protect it from misuse and exploitation, as well as to respect the rights of data owners or face penalties for not doing so. So many of the big companies have recently faced millions of dollars of losses due to data breaches on their part. I think recently India also had few data breaches. I think it was Zomato or something. No, I think it was Domino's who released a lot of data from the users. So one of the major components of GDPR is providing consumers with the right to know where data has been hacked or has been collected. Organizations are obliged to notify national bodies as soon as possible to ensure that the citizens can take appropriate measures to prevent their data from being abused. So in European laws and basically in foreign jurisdiction, GDPR and data protection laws are taken very seriously. So consumers have easier access to their own personal data in terms of how it is processed, with organizations required to detail how they use customer information. So basically, if you go and knock doors of Facebook, if you are in Europe and you say, where is my data, show me my data, or even delete my data, so you can do that. So we'll see how it pans out in India, but this is what it is. So they even have an easy way of opting out of the details being on database or mailing list. Most importantly, the right to be forgotten that I mentioned earlier. So right to be forgotten is basically right to be, if your data is there somewhere on Google and you want it to be deleted, you don't want it to be there. So you can ask that particular entity to delete your data. So that is right to be forgotten. So the Indian context, I think the biggest threat to data collection is the breach in the government system. Recently, if you see Aadhaar cards, they have all our information, and I think it's linked to everything basically nowadays. Even if for basic things, Aadhaar card is linked to it. So basically, the government has all of your personal information that can be misused. I'm not saying the government is misusing your data, but it can fall into wrong hands. So to prevent it from falling into wrong hands, I hope the data protection bill that Sugyata will discuss covers all the aspects that will be needed to protect our data, and we will see how they are implemented. So that's it from my end. If you have any questions or queries, or if you didn't understand anything, or if you want me to repeat anything, feel free to do so. Thank you for having me, and I hope I was of some help today.
That was wonderful, Amir. And
Thank
we
you.
really got a lot of knowledge. I mean, so many things which we were not aware of. And we have been blindly using the Google, the other social media. So they are a lot of things which is very easy for us to assess. At the same time, we have to also be careful that what we are using, as you said, Ki, they are all going to be there, stored there lifelong and even later on. So the uses as well as the things which we have to be careful of. So thank you so much. So here we had with us Amir, who is also the partner of Asif Kurezi and Advocates and Associates. He's having his office in Nagpur, as well as very soon he'll be having his office in Mumbai, Santa Cruz also. Now we take the opportunity to honor him. I would like to honor Mr. Amir Kurezi. We are really grateful to you. You have come here all the way from Nagpur and given your
Thank you so much,
expertise.
sir.
We would like to honor you with an award, a token of information for contributing as a speaker. Thank you so much, Amir.
Thank you so much.
And digitally we'll be sending it to you. So friends, all of you who have joined, once again, I would like to repeat to you all, please, whatever questions you all want to ask, be free. Please post it, as well as please ask any queries you all have. Comment it if you like, you want to compliment. Do comment to our young speakers, Amir, and also the forthcoming speakers. So we go ahead with our next speaker. We have with us young, smart, intelligent, a lady solicitor today, Sagyuta Chaudhary. Sagyuta is with our MPCC from a very long time. She has read law at the Government Law College, Mumbai, and was designated as a solicitor by the Bombay Incorporated Law Society, Bombay High Court in 2016. She is also a fellow of Chartered Institute of Arbitration, London, UK, which is really very incredible. She also holds a diploma in corporate law and a postgraduate diploma in security laws. She went to launch Longitude Solicitors and Advocates. That's really commendable. She has appeared in various courts throughout India, including the Supreme Court of India. She has particular expertise in arbitration, both domestic and international, and commercial litigation in the Honorable Bombay High Court and NCLTs across India. She has also been a visiting faculty at KC Law College and at Government Law College in the year 2018. Also, she's been doing a lot of work for NGOs, and she's very passionate about climate change and regarding education and working for such organization. So we are really proud to have you today here, young solicitor Sagyuta Chaudhary. His father, Prakash Chaudhary, is a good friend of mine and also our NCL DRT in charge president of MPCC. So over to our dear Sagyuta Chaudhary. I very honored and welcome you today on this platform. And
Thank you.
now we would like to hear you further on data protection law in India. Warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gauri ma'am, everyone in MPCC. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to and this platform to come and share my knowledge about this very important topic today, which is data protection law in India. Thank you, Amir, for your speech. I think he has very well and very comprehensively covered the introduction as well as the European aspects of this law. I have a PPT which I would like to share. So I'll just do that. Okay, so first of all, I would just like to just enlighten the audience with a few facts which are important. Yeah, so certain facts which are certain facts which are important to know regarding this topic is that Data protection, I mean, of course, Ahmed has explained the need for the data protection and why we need this law and why it is so important. But specifically in India, it's important to know that presently we have about 70 crore internet users in India. So 34.4% of India's population is using the internet. And this figure is only likely to grow to 97.4 crores by 2025. So India is the second largest online market, which is second only to China, which means there is a lot of internet traffic which is there already in India and which is already growing. And e-commerce marketplaces, online marketplaces, these all India is the second largest market right now on the internet. Also, it's important to know that in the internet penetration rate, which is in India, it's gone up to about 45% in 2021 because of the lockdown. This was just 4% in 2007. So you can imagine the kind of expansion that has taken place in internet use in India. There was a latest report of the Internet and Mobile Association of India, and which showed that the rural India also had 227 million. It had 227 million users, which were active users, and this is boosted because India also has the cheapest internet connection in the world. The time spent by Indians on smartphones has increased by 24% in 2020 because of the lockdown. India is also, the e-commerce orders volume has also increased by, so highlighting all this because it shows statistically how important and how much the internet use has grown in India, and how this is in the coming decade, how this is likely to overtake the very existence and the very basic trade and commerce in India. So, coming to a very brief background on where it all started, of course, Ahmed has initially touched upon GDPR and the situation in the world, but the advent of the first modern data protection laws actually took place in the 70s and 80s in Sweden and Germany. That is where its roots are really, which was followed by, of course, the EU Data Protection Directive, which came in 1995, and then the EU GDPR, which came into force on 25th of May 2018. After this, until the GDPR came in, India was not really taking this aspect of this law very seriously. In fact, very recently, we had not even realized the importance of why we need data protection in India. It was only after the K.S. Puttaswamy judgment, which was a 9-judge constitutional bench of the Supreme Court, which actually recognized the right to privacy as a fundamental right. It was only because of this judgment that after this, there was a Justice B.N. Sri Krishna committee which was formed, and then this led to the Parliament bringing the PDP bill, which I will discuss shortly. But the background of this has been that post the K.S. Puttaswamy judgment, there was the B.N. Sri Krishna committee, which was a committee of experts on data protection. And after that, there was a free and fair digital economy. They presented their report, enacted this or drafted this bill called the Personal Data Protection Bill 2008. So this bill is currently pending in the Parliament, and it's before the Joint Parliamentary Committee. And but the news is that this is going to undergo a major overhaul because the government is still considering many aspects of the bill, and it's still trying to redo the bill in many ways. But basically, the BJP's Meenakshi Lekhi has been discussing the bill since 2019, and its final report has suggested as many as 89 amendments in the bill, along with one new clause which is to be added. So obviously the bill is currently in a state of flux. It is not exactly, it is, I would say, and according to me, I think it is a long way before it becomes law. But as of now, as where we stand today, there is actually no complete and standalone law on data protection in India. Currently, we are ruled by a very different regime, which I will talk about now. So what is the current regulatory framework in India? So right now, PDP, Personal Data Protection, is just a bill. Right now, what we have with us is the Information Technology Act, 2008, which has a section called Section 43 and Section 87, which is really governing data protection. So I've just listed down the basic, the acts, the law which governs data protection in India today. The second and the most important rules which are on this subject is the Information Technology Reasonable Security Practices and Procedures and Sensitive Personal Data or Information Rules, also called the SPDI rules. So these rules are actually prescribed under the IT Act itself, and these rules embody most of what data protection law we have today in India, which is applicable to us. Processing of sensitive personal data. So the SPDI rules and the current regime which is there, this only covers processing of the sensitive personal data online or through an electronic mode. So this right now doesn't cover physical data processing or data or sharing or collecting of data. So it is only online. It has got nothing to do with physical data. Second is, it does not include a foreign citizen. So if you are in India today and if you are collecting data of a foreign citizen, then the current rules will not apply to you, or any company for that matter, because the current SPDI rules are not covering the sensitive personal data of a foreign citizen. So what is sensitive personal data currently? Sensitive personal data is all these things which I have mentioned here in this point. It is the password, financial information such as bank account or credit card or debit card, or the payment details. There is physical and physiological, mental health condition, data of all these things. Then sexual orientation, medical records, history, biometric information, any detail relating to the above, any detail which is relating to all these clauses as provided to a body corporate for providing service, and any information received under the above clauses by a body corporate for processing, stored or processed under lawful contract or otherwise. So these are the categories of data which are currently included as sensitive personal data. So only if you're processing these kinds of data will you be covered by the current regime in India. Apart from, so what are the compliances that are that you have to do? So if there is a company, or if you are being covered by the current regime, then you have to have a privacy policy in place. Privacy policy is something which I think all of us must have seen while scrolling the internet. Like if we are purchasing, even if you're purchasing anything from Amazon or something of that sort, we have there is a privacy policy. All the social networks, everything has a privacy policy, which is basically, most of the times we don't bother to read this policy, but actually it is a policy which gives you information about how they are keeping the privacy of the data that they are collecting from you. So how they are processing that data, how they are storing that data. So all that information is contained in the privacy policy, and how they deal with that data. So all that information is currently covered in the privacy policy. Apart from this, informed consent is something that's very important. Even in the current regime, if you are collecting sensitive personal data from anybody online, then you have to take the informed consent as the consent of that person. That informed consent is when you're informing that person what all things, like how are you going to use that data, how are you going to collect it, store it, process it, etc. All that information has to be given to the person you're collecting it from, and then only if they consent to that can you process that data. Apart from that, compliances, we also have grievance. There's a grievance officer which has to be appointed by every company who's collecting sensitive personal data. The transfer of any such data has to be only with the consent of the person you're collecting the data from. And there should be obviously reasonable security practices and procedures which should be in place which is which should be done by the person who's collecting the data. So like you would know, the current regime is very it's very simple. It is very I mean, it is not at all complicated, and even the compliances that you have to make is very simple. It's majority I mean, majorly what the current regime is covering is informed consent and to keep reasonable security of the data in place. So this is about the current regulatory framework in India. Now we will speak a little bit about the PDP bill, which has been tabled in the parliament and which is likely to become law very soon. And trust me, after this law comes into the picture, a lot of things are going to change. A lot of chaos is going to take place because there are a whole lot of compliances that the companies have to make if they are collecting data. This will also apply to physical data collection. It is not only applicable to online data as it is currently, and it is the amount of liability and the liability that you will be put to if you breach this law is also huge. So which is what we will just see in the coming slides. So first of all, when will this bill apply? It will apply in when the personal data is collected, disclosed, shared, or otherwise processed within the territory of India. It will apply when the personal data is processed by the Indian government or an Indian company or an Indian citizen. So basically the data has to have some Indian connection. Either it should be processed in India, or it should be the personal data which is being processed. It should be the data of an Indian government, or should be processed by the Indian government or the Indian company or an Indian citizen or a body corporate, right? Apart from this, when will it apply? It's when the personal data is processed by a data fiduciary or a data processor outside India, but in connection with a business activity in India. So again, it will apply to even a foreign citizen if he is processing the data in India. So basically the data, if it has any connection, any Indian connection, the bill will apply to that person. Also, it will not apply. Now, when will it not apply? This is something which I think, it's a very long topic, and I'm sure the time is not enough for me to discuss and go into that much of detail. But anonymized data is something that will really immune the companies from a whole lot of compliances in the which comes with this bill. But anonymized data, the concept is still, I feel it is still not completely clear, and this is something that will take time because this is something that will protect a whole lot of compliances that have to be done. So it will not apply to anonymized data. It will not apply to data processing for any journalistic purpose, for any domestic purpose, for protecting the sovereignty of the state, whether disclosure is necessary for enforcing a legal right, for processing research, archiving, or statistical purposes, manual processing of small entities. All these types of data processing will be exempted. But of course, these will all come soon when there is a notification, when the government notifies all these different with these different provisions, and that will come soon. What are the kinds of data which are covered by the bill? So this is so basically this bill is drafted on the lines of the GDPR, only that now, I mean, it has been said that the bill is going to be made, the scope of the bill is going to be made much more wider than even the GDPR. But basically the kinds of data that are covered by this bill are the personal data, the sensitive personal data, and critical personal data. So personal data is anything which makes it's a data about a natural person. So it can't be about a company, it has to be about a natural person. So you and me, or so for example, there is somebody like so if I'm saying that Gauri Chhabria is a natural person, right? Now what will make her personal data? It is the data which will make her identifiable. So there may be, so just getting her name, if I'm only collecting her name, Gauri Chhabria female, that is not personal data. if she gives me Gauri Chhabaria, female, residing at so and so place in Mumbai, having her address and her phone number, that will become personal data. So personal data is not just any data. Personal data is what will make that person identifiable, that this is this person, this is XYZ person who lives here, who has this age. That will make it personal data. That is very important, because this is something that most people don't understand, and they just get very confused about what is exactly personal data. So personal data, sensitive personal data is of course sensitive personal data, as the name says it. So it is financial, health, official, all these things which I have enlisted here, all these will give to put them into the category of sensitive personal data. And then there is critical personal data, and this is of course this will be notified by the central government by notifications, and we don't know what exactly will critical personal data cover, but it will definitely cover some very like, I think this will be very much related to something which has got to do with secrecy or official secrets, and something which has got to do with the sovereignty of the state, only that. Now, what are the persons covered by the bill? There are data fiduciaries, there are significant data fiduciaries, there are data processors and data principals. So these terms are very important to know, because these are really the foundation of what the law is going to be. So data fiduciaries is simply, and I'll just put it very simply for the audiences, that data fiduciary is basically the person who is collecting the data. Significant data fiduciaries are generally, these will be notified by the government, and these will really be social media networks and like that are processing data in a very large volume, and they will be very bulky. So significant data fiduciaries are going to be data fiduciaries who are processing large amounts and significant amount of data. Data processor is somebody who processes the data. Now, it's not necessary that the data processors really own the data. The data processors can be employed by the data fiduciaries to process the data. So they are only processing the data, as in they are collecting it, or they are using it for a particular means, they are indexing it, etc. And next is data principal, who is the person who is giving the data. So of course, these are just some important terms which we should know. Consent, which is necessary for data processing, is also a very important. So this is, consent is the main concept which is of the maximum importance under this bill. It cannot be, the personal data cannot be processed by anybody without the consent from the data principal. The consent has to be free, informed, specific, because paucity of time. For sensitive personal data, there has to be something called explicit content. So this has to be an informed consent, like we discussed earlier about informed consent. And exceptions to this rule are also there, of course, like there are for performance of statutory functions, etc., and all these that I've listed down here, where the consent will not be necessary. Now, this is one thing where the government is really making it difficult, because they have really given a very large window to themselves as exception. So currently, the government is has taken a very free hand in itself, and it has made a policy where it can literally impinge upon the data of personal data of anybody for calling it to be a need for sovereign purpose, or the need of the state, or for any sort of government function. So, and that is something that is also debated in the parliament, but we have to see where that goes. Apart from this, apart from the obviously consent, there are certain obligations of the data fiduciaries which are covered under the bill, which is again very important. The data fiduciaries are, they are likely to they should set out clearly the purpose for which the personal data is collected. So that is also a very important aspect of this bill, where the data that is collected has to be for a specific purpose, and it can be used for. So of course, there are a host of obligations that data fiduciaries have, and like Gauri ma'am rightly reminded me, I should not go too much into detail, and because of paucity of time, I'm just going to conclude. So like you all know that the compliances, there are a host of compliances under the data protection law. It also, there is something called a data protection officer which has to be appointed. There is a data audit that has to be done. And of course, now the time is too short to go into all those listing, but then sum and substance is the offenses and the penalties which I would like to highlight, which is of course that there are certain for the breach of the provisions of the bill, there can be imprisonment up to 3 years and fine which may go up to 2 lakhs, which is of course significant. And also for for data breaches, etc., even the penalties for the companies and for significant data fiduciaries can go up to 4% of the annual turnover of the company, which can be huge. So this, I think, brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope you have all found it very informative, and I will now not take any more time. And thank you so much, everybody, for being so patient and hearing me out. And thank you very much, Gauri ma'am, for bearing up with my slow speed. And
No problem.
I hope that the information was helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our young solicitor, Sagyuta Chaudhary, she has really taken a lot of efforts and given us the expertise and in detail, given us the data, given us the details on this topic of data protection, which is so very important for us, and we really required to know about it. Thank you so much, Sagyuta. Now we would like to honor and felicitate her. This is an award for you and for your contribution as a speaker of Law and Policy Talk series. Congratulations to both Asif, both Amir, and to both Sagyuta, the young speakers who have done really very well. I would now request Ashraf Sheikh to take up the question answer sessions if there are any.
Yeah, so there are two questions from my side.
So I will like to ask one question, then you can ask your question. So one question what I would like to ask for both of you all is, recently I had an experience, I had a Zoom program, and there was a gentleman who was totally bald, and he came inside and he started writing on the screen rubbish, and he started saying that he has, actually even Rohit is aware about it, he has hacked it, but then my technician said it is not hacked, but he had entered, I don't know how he had entered inside. So how do we take care, or is it that only Zoom has such problem, or even Google Connect and other online have such problems? Can you all highlight something on this to safeguard us in future? Amir and Sadyukta, one by one, can you all just in briefly tell us something on that?
Yeah, so this concept has is been called Zoom bombing apparently. So basically, people who don't match with the views or opinion just enter into your Zoom meetings and comment stuff that we obviously don't like. But what can we do regarding it? I think meetings should be logged. Passwords that are the meeting passwords that are shared should not be circulated in an unprecedented manner. And in fact, you can make a complaint in the cyber cell for that, where they can access the IP address and lodge a complaint.
Great. We'll keep in mind. Thank you so much, Amir, for it. Okay, now you can go ahead with your questions, Ashraf.
Yeah, thank you, madam. So my first question is for Amir. Amir, since you have highlighted the data protection laws which are apparently prevailing abroad. Now, if there is a situation, I'm just giving a hypothetical situation. There's a situation that we in India are, serving our data, and somebody abroad, he misuses the data. Now, since in India we don't have that much data protection laws, so how can we take action by sitting in India to that particular gentleman abroad?
So basically, data protection laws in foreign jurisdiction, they have this clause. I think in UK we have RIPA. It's an act which deals with these kinds of conversations. So it has a clause where it says what kind of data can be collected, and if that data is breached, what is the process. So it actually includes foreign people from foreign jurisdiction. So basically, if you send a message sitting in India to a foreign person, or if he sends a message or whatever data is transpired between you, you can actually follow the rules and guidelines that are given under the act and make a complaint. And you can, as I said, as I mentioned, right to be forgotten, you can access that and you can ask the entity whichever is storing your data to delete it.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, my next question is to Yukta. You talked about informed consent. Now, most of the time when we are accessing some websites like Google, Zoom, or anything, and you want to log in or you want to start your account, there is a consent form. And you have to click yes, because if you don't give your consent, you will not be allowed to go further. Now, in that situation, is that consent is a genuine consent and is it a free consent? Because without that, they will not let you process further. And if I don't agree to some of the contents, then what is there a remedy that I can challenge that? Amir, can you take that?
Can you repeat your question, please?
So Sugyupta spoke about informed consent.
Yeah.
Like, for example, whenever I'm accessing any app or any site like Zoom or Google or anything which you have explained. So say, for example, if I'm opening an account on Gmail, so there are some terms and conditions and I have to give my consent. They say, if you agree to the policy, then only they will let me go further and create that account. Now, most of the time, those terms and conditions are not acceptable to me, but I have no choice, because if I don't agree to it, the process will not take me further. So in that situation, if some of the terms and conditions are not acceptable to us, is there a remedy to that?
Actually, there isn't a remedy to that, because there are general policies that these companies form and they are complied with the GDPR rules. But to protect yourself from further things, I think there are a few things that you can do is put on two-factor authentication, opt for end-to-end encryption conversations, and create a firewall, for example, to prevent from your data being misused. These policies are entity specific, so I think you really can't do anything about it.
Yeah,
In the end, if you don't consent to it, you can always opt out.
yeah, and then there are some conditions which they say that, you know, you give your right, you give your permission to use your personal data to other
So
platforms.
actually, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. So whenever you log in into a website or any web page, there comes an option to accept cookies. So cookies is basically your metadata that is collected. So what you can do is you can opt. There are there are options that you can only share essential cookies and you can opt out of non-essential cookies. So you can do that to protect you.
There's one question has come from Professor Swati Vora.
Okay.
He's asking that, is there any citizens charter for cyber security law?
I didn't get the question.
So I mean, what basically she's asking, is there any citizens charter, like, you know, do's and don'ts for citizens for cyber security?
I don't think there is right now. I think it will be enshrined in the data protection bill that will come into force hopefully soon.
Okay, all right. So thank you very much, Amir. Gauri ma'am, over to you.
Okay, so thank you all of you all for joining, and it was really a wonderful session. And now I request our General Secretary of MPCC, Viswajit Sarkar, all the way from Sholapur, Osmanabad, who will be proposing a vote of thanks to our young speakers. Over to you, Vishwajit.
Yes, thank you, madam. Our today's speaker, dear Amir Qureshi ji and Sanjukta Chaudhary ji, has given very much and very nice speech and well guidance to us. I would like to thanks to our Asif ji Qureshi sir and congratulate him for such a wonderful speech given by his son, our dear Amir Bhai ji. And I would like to thanks both of the speakers and all the participants for such a wonderful session. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you to our Asif ji Qureshi sir thank you to our Gauri Jhabria Madam ji for such a wonderful program conducting, and thank you very much for all the participants. Thank you.
Friends, before I end, I would really remember a song which I would just like to recite. Are you all there, everybody?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah. So since both of them parents, I mean, Asif Kurezi is driving, I can see him, and Prakash Chaudhary, I don't know whether he's there, but on their behalf, I really remember. And of course, Sanjukta has been my student also. So I would just like to sing a minute of song for both of them. पापा कहते हैं बड़ा नाम
Very nice.
करेगा, बेटा हमारा ऐसा नाम करेगा, मगर ये तो कोई न जाने है मेरी मंजिल है कहाँ. So my best wishes to Amir and my best wishes to Sanjukta, and for whatever your experience and in your young age, you all are really brilliant and done well. Long way to go. Sky is the limit. Wish you all the best. Be safe, everybody. Next Saturday, we will be seeing all of you all again. It is very important. It's a finale day. So please welcome everybody next Saturday. And now with these words, I'll be ending. Stay safe, stay positive, everybody. Thank you, Rohit. You have been really helping us, our technician. Thank you for the question answer session, Ashraf. Thank you for Vishwajit. Bye, everybody.
And congratulations, Asif.
Thank you.
Again. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Hello.
And Madam also sing very nice song. Thank you, Madam.
Madam is a very good singer.
Welcome.